Greetings, Jeffrey Zavik here. Greetings to everyone and welcome. Our expert this session is pioneering a model of healthcare called We Don't Guess, We Test. The Wellness Way reinforces a philosophy of healthcare that really respects the biochemical individuality of every patient, which is why you can imagine it's so important to us at Immuno Laboratories. Patients receive an in-depth consultation, physical exam, individualized testing, and then personalized health plans to get them back on the road to wellness. So with ongoing care and education, the patients are empowered to proactively manage their own health care for the many years to come. But here's the cool thing. The Wellness Way's approach does not end with patient care. The Wellness Way is committed to sharing their model of healthcare with other practitioners like many of you. So by establishing partnerships with clinics throughout the United States, the Wellness Way goal to impact communities nationwide is being realized. It's an honor and it's a privilege to introduce and welcome Dr. Patrick Flynn, the founder and director of the Wellness Way Clinics. Dr. Flynn's a naturopathic doctor and a chiropractic physician, and he started his first clinic just 10 years ago with a vision of what healthcare could really be. And it's now blossomed into a model that others are following. Greetings and welcome, Dr. Flynn.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Appreciate the time with you guys tonight.
Well, we have a large number online, so let's get right to it. Every doctor has a unique story that led them to become a doctor, no doubt about it. So just give us a little idea of your background. How did you get to this point?
Well, it was kind of neat how it happened. It's a long story. It started when I was 13 years old. Actually, even started before that. What happened to us is I suffered massively from a lot of health conditions that way. And because what I did as a young child, I suffered from ADD and I was diagnosed as a troubled child when I was young. And the thing about it was, as I was growing up, I didn't realize things were that bad until the people around me kind of told me that they were that bad. and the story goes, like I said, I drove my mother completely nuts and stuff. And so long story short, what ended up happening was, it wasn't until I was actually a teenager when, at this time, my grades were extremely poor. I got diagnosed with, they didn't call ADD back then. They were troubled and they needed me for counseling and stuff like that. And I didn't realize, for example, that my brain was being affected negatively by what was happening on with my body. And so by just some basic research that way, because I had a lot of different seasonal allergies and things like that. So what ended up happening was I ended up saying, okay, I went to the library and I picked up a book, and the book was How the Immune System Works. And I started to read it, and then it correlated some things, for example, with immune responses that way, and it started to get me interested in health and stuff like that, and it led to me changing my diet, led to me seeing progress there, and then I decided to actually go into nutrition and stuff like that. And I looked at all the healthcare forms out there, and believe it or not, I actually found a chiropractor that actually not only was a great chiropractor, but he also had a background in actually Chinese medicine and stuff like that. So that's what led to my adventure of just slowly starting as a sick child, which then, for example, led me to going, okay, listen, I have to help figure this out. The sad part was because no one was giving me any answers. So here I'm a young child growing like crazy and having a lot of negative problems. So it's been nice to be able to actually go through my experience myself, because I watch when kids get diagnosed with all these problems that way. And it kind of frustrates me because as a young child, you go through this stuff and you don't really know what you're really going through, but it's not nice. It's not good. But people don't understand. And that's why I even found it in the hormone realm. People don't understand.
Fascinating. And then actually, now you did ultimately become a chiropractor, a licensed physician. And I mean, generally speaking, a chiropractor is thought of as someone who treats the spine. So you made an amazing and I mean, rather unusual in my mind transition where you're now focused on hormones. So you've done that. And now you've even been nicknamed the hormone whisperer. So I'm really fascinated to learn what that means.
That's kind of a funny story. What ended up happening is it came from actually patients. To what really started the whole process off, and actually I haven't been in practice for 10 years. I've been practicing now for 17. And when I first met my wife, aka my girlfriend at the time, she ended up being very sick. I was just getting out of school. I wasn't completely done with school. I was just finishing up in the last 3 months that way. And very shortly after meeting her and starting to date her, what ended up happening was she ended up having PMS so bad that it basically take her down for a whole week, and she couldn't function, and she was over in significant amount of pain. And what ended up happening was, for example, so it started this whole process off, and I said, what's going on with you and stuff. And obviously, just starting to date that way, the communication wasn't there that well. And she says, well, I just can't, I have really bad endometriosis, and I can't, I was told I can't have kids. They almost pulled out my uterus, many years ago and stuff like that because the endometriosis got so bad, but they chose not to go that route. But she suffered on a daily basis. Well, being the docs that we are, and then step back and kind of come back to the chiropractic realm. Chiropractic realm, for example, is what taught me to figure all this stuff out. And that's where, for example, because the way a chiropractor thinks compared to the medical philosophy, a chiropractic philosophy taught me to think differently. Now, people say, Doc, well, also you went to, you went and continued to be a naturopath. But really, honestly, what allowed me to become what they now call the hormone whisperer comes from a different philosophy of thinking. So I looked at my girlfriend, aka my future wife, and said, something, it's okay. We got to figure this out. I don't believe, for example, that if you have a uterus, that you actually cannot have children. And I wouldn't accept that because our basic premise is we know that the body is genetically programmed for birth. You know what I'm saying? And so we said, listen, we got to do something. So the mindset was, I'm going to do whatever I can with the understanding I have, because obviously the medical philosophy that she saw way before she knew me had no answers for her besides go on birth control or rip out the uterus. Well, if they would have done that to her years before I met her that way, and I met her when she was 23, years before I met her, that medical philosophy would have ripped it out. So I said, listen, the different way of thinking and how we approach these hormones has to be totally different. And the sad part is, naturopathically, as they taught us, it was still the wrong thinking. And that's one thing where I tell people, like, a lot of people say, Doc, I actually even had a person email me before this webinar. I saw the webinar. I said, food sensitivities and male and female hormones, I don't understand the connection. And this is where practitioners miss the boat, because tonight I'm going to show you in great detail where the connection is and why people, if they don't understand these responses, they'll never be able to truly figure out male and female hormones.
That's fantastic. It's interesting because we're starting to see a pattern here where basically you're presented with a challenge, an unsolved situation, whether it was in your own life and then ultimately in your wife's life, or girlfriend at the time become wife, and that is the pattern that you seem to follow. And of course, you carry that right through to your patients. So now I've heard that you also run a variety of clinics around the country, and you've been heard to say that you think food allergies are one of the most important things to be dealt with. So being hormone related, and then how did you make that connection?
Well, let's step back and let's use my wife. I always tell people, my wife was my first example. Coming out of school, my main focus, believe it or not, was children. But for some of you guys listening to this webinar right now, I want you to think of something. This is actually pretty funny. Because I suffered as a child, so I wanted to make sure that kids weren't suffering. But then what happened is I started working on children, great recoveries with them, doing wonderful. But then the mother would say, Doc, I suffer with some things. Can you take a look at me? Absolutely, yes. Well, the one thing that you find out about is this. Children don't tell many people about their testimonials. Women talk to everybody. And when you start, and so people say, Doc, how'd you become a hormone whisperer? Hey, guess what? You start fixing a woman, they will tell you everything, and they will tell everybody else everything that way. So what ended up happening was, through the process, I said, okay, listen, we are sitting in a situation with my wife that way, and I'm like, I wouldn't accept that I knew that, for example, she still had all of her body parts. I knew, for example, that she is genetically programmed to have kids. I knew genetically that her cycle is supposed to happen at a certain time that way. So I started to investigate, and it was interesting. So I started to actually call some of the big hormone experts around the country that were practicing, and believe it or not, it was always about balancing female hormones. Balancing female hormones. And I'm like, okay, and they're like, okay, take this and do this and do this. And believe it or not, I would look at it and say, okay, it makes sense, but it wasn't. It always left that in the back of my head. I would go, why? Why are these hormones off? It's not because you lack a bioidentical. It's not because you lack an herb. It's not because you lack this and this. And I'm not saying those aren't wonderful things, but we still have to get back to that process why. And what ended up happening is I started to really investigate endometriosis. And one thing that was so interesting, and it clicked to me one day when it was about 3 months after we were dating, and I started to actually see very little change with some of the experts that I was using that way, and I said, okay, guess what? Enough. I got to step back and think of it from the chiropractic standpoint, going, listen, what's going on with her? Okay, where's the causal factors coming from? Now people say, well, Doc, was she getting adjusted? Well, sure she was. So we're removing one of those markers that could be a disruption to how they were working. But when that happened was she was bent over in pain one night, and I said, honey, I said, do me a favor. I said, lay on your back for me that way. I want you to lay down, and I just palpated the top of her uterus, and it was physically swollen. And now, being the doc that we know, and what I like to call our Swiss watch principle, remember, all the body gears work together. And I said, there's an inflammatory response in here. There's something going on in that uterus that the immune system is causing devastation, havoc on it. And I said, you want something? I got to test the immune system. And I reminded me of myself as a little kid when I noticed when I started to change my diet and pull away from different foods that we now call inflammatory, I started to see my seasonal allergies change. So then what I did, for example, I said, okay, listen, better yet, I want to get her tested properly. I want to see, for example, is there any immune reaction happening that way that now leads that contribution to that swelling, to the endometrial reactions that way. And lo and behold, as we started to actually do that, guess what? The uterus started to change. And I know it's hard to sometimes go in great detail on here, but I'm gonna touch on some things just a little bit that way. That's saying, listen. So when we start to look at the environment of what we live in that way, I didn't realize that my wife was actually eating things, for example, that were creating not only a GI reaction, a systemic reaction happening within the stomach and in the kidneys and the intestinal tract that way, but we understand you trigger the immune system, and going back to that Swiss watch principle, you trigger every system.
Wow.
And if there's one thing that we do to ourselves on a regular basis, I guarantee, Jeffrey and Boo, and I guarantee that you ate at least 2 to 3 times today.
Absolutely.
Well, so I don't care if you're a male or a female. If there is immune tissue within every organ of the body on a regular basis, and if it's triggered, guess what? You're going to have an inflammatory reaction in some organ that way, which not only is going to devastate the organ, but then all the organs have to respond. And their response comes with a hormonal response. And that's why I kept on stepping back. You can never, let me say this now, and you can quote me on this, you can never balance female or male hormones out if you're eating things that are inflammatory, period.
Wow, fascinating, fascinating, very interesting. And you have a variety of clinics now popping up around the country. You're starting to already give us a pretty good idea of how they'd be different, because I'm assuming this philosophical investigational approach is then what you're having happen in each of your clinics. Is that correct?
Yeah, and see, the one thing that people are looking for when they practice, they'll call and say, Doc, what kind of protocol can I use with people? I'm like, that's impossible. Take 2 women with endometriosis. There is no way that you can actually treat them the same. That's why people can do this. You can go into the best, and I can tell you some wonderful companies. I'm not biased to them. Pick any very good herbal company, and you call the rep and say, what do you have for endometriosis?
Right.
If every doctor calls and asks for the same thing, it's the same herb.
Yes.
But here's what happens. With testing, you can differentiate what each individual person needs. And I say this is not functional medicine. Functional medicine is still a medical philosophical mindset. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I said it's kind of cool. I being a naturopath, if I would have just been a naturopath, and there's wonderful schools, Bridgeport, Baxter, all of them. I speak at those places. I get asked to present these things, but I have to let people know that the mindset of understanding how the physiology in the body works. If we come from the approach of going, okay, listen, we don't guess, we test, and each person we're testing on a regular basis to monitor their physiology, but not from a standpoint of trying to balance things, but remove those triggers, remove those interferences. Now people say, Doc, there's more triggers than foods. You're right, but here's what happens. If you're 1 year old, and this is the way I do with my children don't even get food before they get a test done. Why? Why would I want to give my child, or my friends, or my mother, or my grandmother anything inflammatory when we know it contributes to almost every disease on the planet? So it just doesn't make any sense to me. And then guess what? Because this makes sense to patients, they're coming in by a truckload to all of our clinics trying to understand this. And it's quite simple.
Oh, hold just one moment. We're getting some kind of a background feedback right now.
I say it sounds like somebody's sawing.
It does. Is that... All right. It stopped now.
There you go.
All right. I don't want anyone to miss any of this because it's fascinating, it's refreshing, it's unique, and I think it's really important because the one thing that we started out with is that there are no two people alike. There's biochemical individuality, and on top of that, no one person stays the same all the time either. So the whole idea that you're presenting that we must test instead of guessing is so important, because there's just no two people alike, and we're all dynamic human beings as well, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and the great thing about it is this. When you look at, for example, hormone reactions, and I know that each one of you guys are out there going, I see people come with hormones. And here, I'll give you an example. At some of the largest hormone conferences, I've been able to teach at that way, and I've sat in with them, and they come up with protocols on how to balance progesterone, on how to balance testosterone. But here's one thing, if you've ever dealt with hormones, I want to speak to you guys that have done this before. You can even give them things that you even test progesterone low or test testosterone low, and even give them good herbals or even bioidenticals that will never hurt them. But because, for example, hormones are reactive, hormones can never be a primary problem. Let me say this. I was speaking at a medical conference in Detroit a long time ago. This is probably about 10 years ago. And my topic was, there is no such thing as a male and female hormone problem. And of course, one of Oprah's doctors came there, and she was mad because she's like, I'm going to prove this guy wrong. And so and this is the big thing, and this is what I really want you guys to get, and if you take this away, the philosophy of thinking you'll be able to apply tomorrow if you see patients is this. When you actually look at progesterone or you look at estrogens, if you think about it this way, by definition, a hormone's a messenger. Therefore, there has to be a message first. And see, so what happens is the philosophical thinking of it that way, which I believe the chiropractic thinking has actually taught me that process, that way the chiropractic philosophy is going, listen, so if all we do is try to balance hormones, you may get a little bit of symptom relief, but they're always going up and down, because imagine this. Imagine that their food sensitivities were not touched, were not tested at all. And all of a sudden, for example, you balance their hormones, and they're inflammatory to an egg, or they're inflammatory to an apple, and they eat that. There is a systemic demand on their body hormonally, and their hormones come and help them survive that stressor, and it will draw on steal hormone. And like, doc, I seem to be balanced, but then I have ups and downs. Well, you have ups and downs is because you are stressing your body, and just trying to balance them. There is never in any way that you can balance male or female hormones. What you have to do is you have to remove those inflammatory markers, and your body is genetically programmed to keep that balance. And that's where, for example, and then what I've done through the years, I started detailing testing their immune systems, everything from their cytokines, which is just an immune hormone, everything from the food sensitivities, everything from bacteria. And what happens is we're starting to see one of the major things I deal with right now is I have women traveling from all over the world for infertility. And I can actually give you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases that, for example, that women have even come into their doctors and say, Doc, my ovaries were normal during ultrasound, and they ran the dye through the fallopian tubes, they did all the technology, and they say everything is perfect. Well, sure, everything is perfect, but if there's consistent inflammatory immune demands on those hormones, and even if you fertilize the egg, the environment for that baby to implant and develop is non-existent. You know what I'm saying? And even if you measure the hormones and see that they're off, all you're doing is you're palidating them naturally on trying to receive balance instead of finding out those inflammatory markers that will actually restore the normal balance by the body's genetic programming to keep that homeostasis.
Fantastic. How insightful. Love it. And so it's amazing, and I think that really gives doctors listening another way of thinking, another approach, or fine tuning if they're already involved in this arena. But it's very, very fascinating. Now, up until I don't know exactly the timeline, but initially you were basically focused on expanding your own practice, opening up several locations, training your own staff, and communicating this idea to a growing number of patients. And then at some point you decided to open it up and actually teach it and share it with other docs and let them become a part of it. Was there something that triggered that as such?
Yeah, actually, I will use her name, Dr. Angie in our Houston office.
Oh, okay.
She's actually a surgeon. And I say, wait, Doc, you're a chiropractor, a naturopath, and a surgeon called you? Yes.
It happens.
A message.
It can happen.
It does. Well, you got to remember, here's what happens is, and if you guys follow me on Facebook, just go to Dr. Patrick Flynn, the Hormone Whisperer, and I just posted the other day. Right now, Jeffrey and Boone, do you know every single day, and I can physically prove it to you, every single day I get messages from doctors or doctor spouses saying, I have hormone problems. I need help. Now, we're not talking just basic patients. We're talking medical doctors. We're talking chiropractors. And I actually was on the phone on Sunday with a very wonderful chiropractor in Chicago, wonderful person, and they're both chiropractors, male and female, and she went through pregnancy, and guess what happened? She probably already contacted you, Jeffrey, because I told her to get an account with you guys right away. But anyways, here's what happens. She ended up saying, Doc, post-pregnancy, I can't balance my hormones. And I walked her through some basic physiology. And let me give you an example, guys. This is what happens with women. During pregnancy, the immune system shifts so the baby is not killed because, remember, a baby to a woman's body is a foreign entity. So the immune system will do what? Will shift in order to actually allow the Mr. Pac-Man, the T cells, not to eat the baby. So hormone levels shift with that. But then what happens is when the baby is born and the immune system doesn't shift back, guess what happens? Your immune system stays on a high antibody response. That's why post-pregnancy you have to get these women tested for those antibodies, IgG and IgE, because what happens is there's such a high level, and if they don't come down, they're going to be so reactive, and if they're eating their foods on a regular basis, they can never restore their hormones, and that leads to postpartum depression and chronic inflammation and long-term bleeding. So the minute these women are given birth, I was saying, listen, I'll come down to the hospital. We'll get them to draw your blood. We'll send a test kit out to you a day after that that baby's born. Okay, it's that important. The immune reactions that are created can cause such devastation to the hormones that stop looking at hormones, guys. It's a dog chasing his tail. You'll never catch it. You have to look at the immune system, and I cannot see anything yet that we actually cause more devastation to our immune system than foods that we eat. People say, well, Doc, I'm going to go towards an anti-inflammatory diet, and I'm going to actually just eat organic. Great. You're allergic to an apple, you eat organic, you'll be organically sick. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not, remember, you don't want toxicity. Okay? But it's very important to know what you become reactive to, which creates and triggers all those inflammatory reactions.
No, that's great. And now I know that there's no way in this short amount of time that we'll be together to go deep into the whole assessing of hormones and treatment of the imbalances, but you want to make some distinctions for the docs that maybe are somewhat involved with this. What makes your method of assessing hormones and then your treatment of the imbalances so effective? Obviously, part of it's what you've just shared with us, and that is the whole idea of food sensitivities and the immune response.
Well, let's even go back to this, okay? If we look at just some basic immune cells, macrophages and neutrophils and all the different cells that, for example, that are macrophages are in almost every tissue of the body, okay? Now, the one thing that happens is this, but they're not differentiated, which means this. The minute that there is a food sensitivity reaction, there's an immune reaction. The one thing that we know scientifically now, that if you trigger one immune cell, guess what happens to all of them throughout the body systemically? They all become reactive.
They talk.
That's why, for example, they do. They talk, and those hormones that they talk with are called cytokines. Well, you'll find out that, for example, and this is well documented even in all the medical literature when it comes to triggering to some food response, that the immune system now says, listen, whoa, we got an invader here, okay? It's really interesting. Do you know that the immune system, we're not supposed to have proteins within the bloodstream? Okay? People say, Doc, doesn't make any sense. No, we're supposed to have amino acids in the bloodstream. See, proteins within the bloodstream, what ends up happening now, it actually treats it just like a virus. That's why there's such a large immune response, because we don't want that virus getting in and actually breeding and coming in infection and kill us. So a food protein that moves into the system and actually creates an antibody response, the body treats it like a virus. It's well documented. It can't differentiate between the proteins. So you get a virus, you get a food reaction, it's the same response to the body. The big thing is it causes a systemic response. That's why if you notice, guys, that if you're a chiropractor, and this has happened many times before, I love being a chiropractor. We adjust. I mean, my biggest week I ever had one time was 822 adjustments in 1 week. Okay, besides my consults and everything. All right, and but here's what happens. There's been so many times. I guarantee doctors, if you're chiropractors on here and you've experienced this, you've adjusted people and you even took an x-ray, great analysis, I love CBP and clear, great spinal correction that way, and you corrected and their spine was still swollen, okay? The reason why it's swollen is because just like the Swiss watch, you affect one gear, you affect them all, and what happened is sometimes people go, Doc, chiropractic has been working, but my inflammation, my pain has not decreased. And it's so easy to actually figure out what's going on to reduce their inflammation that I've said, listen, I've had people going for back pain and say, listen, I'm going to adjust you. There's correction that needs to be done here. There is no doubt. But if you don't get a food sensitivity test done, you're going to hit a plateau and you're going to think I didn't help you anymore. Okay? So it's those little immune responses that actually become systemic and affect everything from your big toe to those cytokines even cross the blood-brain barrier. And that's why you see so many headaches from actually food sensitivities that way. See, so really, this really should be food sensitivity and from head to toe. So we named this wrong. Okay? But remember,
next time
the hormones do that.
To be
exactly. And so, and I apologize, I didn't answer their question. What led me to actually moving into teaching everybody else? See, I've been extremely successful for 17 years. I've had multiple clinics. We've done well. And then a surgeon called me, Dr. Angie down in Texas, and said, listen, I need you for myself, for healthcare that way. And she goes, would you ever think of opening a clinic down here? I'm like, no. I'm like, I want to, I'm growing at a great rate that way. I don't want to outreach to Texas that way. I did have one in Florida at the time with a wonderful doc. But she said, listen, she goes, well, I already have a practice. She performs surgery on Wednesdays. She owns part of a surgery center. And then she has a practice on the side. And she says, listen, she goes, I'm sick of cutting people open all day and then giving them anti-inflammatories. I really want to find out where their inflammation comes from. And she used the approach for herself, but now she does the Wellness Way approach, for example, on the other days when she doesn't do surgery. And guess what? She's found things that are blowing her mind away, and she's found out that her patients post-surgery, and once again, she would be a wonderful person to have on this talk right now, or she'll be actually at our Florida seminar, because she's like, listen, she goes, post-surgery, these people are recovering better because I'm not just trying to suppress their inflammation, I'm trying to figure out the triggers to the inflammation, and these people don't even realize it could be good organic food that's triggering these responses. So she goes, Doc, I need you to help me. I'm like, and no joke. So I didn't set out, guys, to actually have this huge affiliate program where all these offices now are just becoming, they're not changing who they are, they're adding the Wellness Way approach, medical doctors, chiropractors. We just had a nurse practitioner sign on from Iowa in Cedar Rapids. We just had another doctor, for example, just sign on from Greenville, South Carolina. And what they're doing is they're taking what they know, even if they're a medical doctor, and they're saying, okay, listen, this philosophy of thinking, no matter what I do from that standpoint, I can apply this because I know it's going to take and create not only hormone balance, the hormone balance is that way, but just creates a normal homeostatic response in hormones, in inflammation, and everything. And the great thing is it comes from a simple model of we don't guess, we test, because there's no two people alike. So the affiliate program, Jeffrey, just came from a doctor demand. And then what happened is, then guess what? I kind of kept close because I love training. I love training my doctors. I train them intensely. They get so much of me, it's ridiculous. I have an online university that I don't know if you even knew about. Remember, it's all private though. I keep it within my group. And then the other doctors said, hey, you know something? I have a buddy of mine that would like to come to a training. And I was, and no joke, I was like, no. I want to keep my intense core group, and I want to train you guys to be the best doctors. I want you to be very successful. I want you guys, and then believe it or not, it was outside doctors from friends of mine and friends and that are practitioners, and then it was my other doctors saying, listen, I have a buddy in Iowa that wants to learn what we do.
So it's hard to say no. Absolutely hard to say no.
Well, so I started opening up my teachings, and they exploded. Then the chiropractic colleges started calling me. All the big other seminars started calling me because, see, I used to teach before, but I got away from it because, see, my main thing is this, guys. The people who are on this webinar right now, the reason we're on here is because you practice every day. I still practice full time. Let me say that. I still practice full time because my intensity after 17 years of being able to figure out the sickest people on the planet, guess what? Still drives me. It's not driving about making a big practice. Yes, we have a massive practices and some of that, but that's not what drives me. What drives me is we can test these people and with our thinking come up with the way to actually have the answers that nobody else can have, and that's why people travel for infertility, endometriosis, depression, psychiatric problems, impotence, everything from all over, even if they live in California. It's just kind of sad.
Fantastic. And stay with us, everyone, if you find this as interesting as we do, because at the close of this lovely interview, we're going to make some great offers to people in terms of upcoming events and draw one of the doctor's names, and somebody's going to win a great gift. So let's carry on here. Now, because some of the doctors are in states where, the idea of hormones and so forth might be very difficult without a medical doctor or prescriptive, part of the practice. Would you address that? Do your methods require a medical doctor to prescribe, or do you have to be in a state where you can? Can you give us a little insight on that?
No, the great thing about labs today, labs you don't even need a prescription to actually get them done. With all the labs today, even things like LabCorp Request, a person can actually walk in with no diagnostics needed that way and request labs done. The great thing is, for example, things like Access Lab, which just do really good hormone labs that way. And on top of it, for example, even if you do, it depends on what you're testing. See, there's 3 different methods to test actually hormones. There's saliva, blood, and urine. And here's one thing where training is needed. You have to know what situation it is on that individual person to actually test them. You can't just do blood hormones on everybody. You know why? Because it may not be appropriate for that person. All right? And see, so that's where the big time training is, because if a person comes in and they have endometriosis, guess what? Blood's not your best form. Actually, urine is. Okay? Now, let's say you, for example, have a menopausal woman that just has hot flashes. Well, believe it or not, blood might be the best. See, that's where the doctrine really comes in, because there is no cookie cutter. That's why, here's one reason why I shied away from training people that weren't part of us that way. This happens all the time, and this I can honestly tell you guys is one of my frustrations. Everybody wants sometimes a cookie cutter approach, and I wish there was one, just for the simplicity of practice, but it's not. But on the flip side, it's not, so it's a very exciting approach, because you can actually, it takes some investigation, and most doctors, I hate to say this, I even see it in the medical field. If you look at, for example, medicine has standards that they follow. How can there be a standard when everybody's so different? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's
It shouldn't make any sense to the practitioners.
Great observation. And, it was written a long time ago by Dr. Roger Williams about biochemical individuality, but for some reason, well, I guess for convenience purposes, everybody wants to put people in a category, whether it's for a diet or disease. They love having disease groups and treatment methods for those diseases and so on and so forth. So how about this, without giving any kind of, avoiding any HIPAA privacy, what about an exciting example of one of your female patients, share, to have someone, have the docs online follow the thinking you went through and the process you went through to take someone who is having a real challenging situation and turn it around.
Okay, so let's even just, I think one of the most exciting but also most devastating things, believe it or not, is actually infertility. Now, people say, Doc, if we go on your website, on the Wellness Way Clinic's website, because we all, use one website directly, they'll say, Doc, I see people that have cancer that said they reversed, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but honestly, the most emotional thing that can ever happen, and docs, listen to me this, the most devastating thing that can happen to any person is telling a woman she can't have a baby. It devastated my wife. It devastates women. So one of my new patients last Monday, okay, wonderful lady, Catherine, she's from Wyoming. I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin. She drove she drove here, from Wyoming. Now, it's kind of interesting. Now, the sad part is this. Why do they have to drive to Wyoming to come see me here? There should be practitioners everywhere. See, people are like, now remember, think of it this way. She already went through IVF, okay, implantation 3 times at $25,000 a piece.
Wow.
Do you understand? And see, it's so devastating for these women, because they would do anything to have a baby. And I can imagine telling a woman she can't have a baby, it's so mentally tough on them. So I said, listen, so let's walk through. So I went through my examination. Chiropractors. Now, I know the majority of you guys on here, chiropractors are great, but even if you're not, it doesn't matter, okay? But what I want you to think about is this. So I went through my analysis. So here's one thing that I will tell you what I believe is, for example, a great way of looking at. Well, we look at the things that can be traumatic to the body. That's why I love being a chiropractor. We understand that trauma is an inflammatory trigger. It can trigger the immune system. That's why when we adjust and reduce inflammation. People say, Doc, we take off nerve pressure. I don't disagree with that. But what really causes the major damage is actually the inflammatory response, because that immune system can destroy the nervous system. Second of all, we look at the very toxic effects. Now, like I said, toxins, people think, well, guess what? You hate heavy metals, you hate those things. Yeah, but if you understand, if you are sensitive to, is no different than getting mercury in your body. It's a toxin, okay? And then, for example, you go and you measure the hormones to see where all the stress hormones are at. So actually, no joke, I have her labs right here, because I just had her consult yesterday going over her labs that way. Now, if you look, for example, her progesterone is significantly low. her DHEA is significantly low. Now, if we just look at that alone, just knowing those two things that are low, we know if we look at the stress response, we know that DHEA is the most abundant hormone in the body. It can convert to progesterone, but progesterone also converts to cortisol and also cortisone. So I want you to think about this, guys. If you eat a food that creates inflammation, your body has to respond and put, just from a hormonal stance, and actually create cortisone, which comes from progesterone, to reduce that inflammatory response. So eating a food that you're sensitive to will deplete your hormones. So I can show you from the flip side that the immune system not only is going to create an inflammatory response within an organ, damage it, affect how hormone balance comes, but on the backside, I also can show you how eating the bad food that you're sensitive to, organic apple, if you're allergic to it, you're going to be sick. But here's what happens. That, guess what? It's going to drain your hormones. So just trying to give bioidentical progesterone, something that builds progesterone levels up, you never create balance, because if you keep on going to that well to drain and react to what's going on, you always end up depleted. Or you're never going to get your body to a homeostatic balance, because if you try to wean a person off something, they're going to drop just as they were before. So now what that does is this. So I went through my exam. I saw that she was so gut inflammatory, even on X-ray that way. And
Wow.
the nice thing is I knew, for example, that guess what? She's got to have some food sensitivities that way. So, of course, ran the panel, and guess what? No, wrong. She's also low in testosterone. See, what you'll find out, guys, is this. Because these women, for example, are so depleted hormonally that way, guess what? I don't care if they have sex on the right day. I don't care if they map their cycle out and they know exactly when they ovulate. Remember, getting fertilization is very easy. An egg coming in contact with sperm. But the environment of that uterus is so hormonally and inflammatory dependent that there's no inflammation, and it's so hormonally balanced that way that, guess what? When that egg comes out and goes to implant on, the body says, no freaking way I'm going to do this. I can barely get through today, and you think I'm going to develop a baby? Okay?
Wow.
So
Wow.
Therefore, now, so what did I do? So I said to her, listen, I looked her straight in the eyes, okay, and I said, listen, Catherine, if you don't avoid these foods, anything I do from that point, it's not going to help. It's not. Can you commit to me that you will actually do this? She said, yes. Now, practitioners, think of this. Stop telling people that you can help them. It's ridiculous. Any doctor that says they can help a person is a liar. Now, let me explain why. If you tell them that you can help them, you take full responsibility for their actions. And guess what? Even if you can control every one of their actions daily, you cannot control them walking outside and breathing a toxin and mentally stressing out. So stop doing that. It's a partnership between you and that person that says, listen, I will do everything I can to create the best homeostasis, test you properly, educate you how to keep these things in a very good level, but without this partnership. See, because a lot of people say, because here's what happens. Doctors will come and want to say, I can help you for the confidence of the patients. I look at them and said, I have no freaking clue if I can help you. But I can tell you this, no one's going to test you like I do. No one's going to dig deep enough to find out what's going to disrupt your hormonal balances and stuff like that. And then we're going to work together. And if you can avoid these things, guess what? We're going to do wonderful. If you can't, I'm just a natural Band-Aid.
Well,
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen, that is a real gem in this conversation. The whole concept of partnership and that verbal languaging of how to present that to a patient. Thank you very much. That's a great distinction. Now, not to ignore, and well, I take it we've had a happy ending with this patient, so you should really complete the story.
Yeah, well, remember, her start was just yesterday. Okay?
Oh,
But her start was just yesterday, and so then therefore what I did was this. And I say, Doc, well, wait, she was low in progesterone. She was low on these things. Did I give her things? Absolutely I did. Okay. Now the one thing is this, I found trauma, so I set her up with the chiropractor, so when she gets back, she's going to start to get adjusted. I actually found the things, for example, physiologically that her body needs. And that's where you understand some certain herbals and certain things that can actually become the precursors and help those levels build up. But the biggest thing is this, like I said, you got to stop tapping that well. And remember, she showed no infections. I tested her for it that way. So it's the only thing inflammatory that we found besides, for example, and her cortisol levels were pretty good because we measured her 4 sample cortisol that way. So her cortisol level was good. So we know the mental stress wasn't too bad on her that way. So we knew that, for example, one of the major things that was, like my example is this. If you drive back to Wyoming with a quarter tank of gas, are you going to make it? She's like, no. I said, then how can you expect your body to actually go through a pregnancy for 9 months when you don't have enough fuel to get through the day?
great.
Okay?
Yeah.
So she's like, and so I said, listen, so here's what happens. We're going to work on this together. And the great thing is this. Now remember, honestly, that's a very typical scenario with even a person that comes with endometriosis. The only thing different is maybe their estrogen levels are significantly high. Okay? See, so, and once again, so it's about coming up and figuring out where these things are coming from that way, creating that program, creating that plan that is specific to them that way, and then really doing what? And then working with them on a partnership basis. Do you know one of my first questions is, and I will tell you this, Jeffrey.
Yes.
I kind of lied to you guys in one way. There is one standard I do have. There is actually only one test I can tell you I do on every person that walks in my door. Guess what it is?
I'm hoping it's food allergy testing.
It's food allergy testing. It is. It is. You know something? It's not a joke. It's actually a standard. Now, obviously, what I mean by standard is this. We until we test somebody, I don't believe that even a child. My kids were breastfed. My 2.5-year-old's still breastfed right now. Okay, and my kids have never even got introduced food until actually they had a test done. It's that serious. Would you now, Jeffrey? I got a simple question. Would you want your son to eat something inflammatory?
Absolutely not. No.
Every person here on this call would never want even their friends, their family. And so here's a question for you. Then why aren't all these people tested?
Right.
Why aren't these people tested on their basis? Because here's what happens. And think about it this way. Let's say a woman goes through pregnancy. It's going to alter her immune system, which is going to alter her immune responses to food. So why aren't we testing every pregnant woman after we're done? Because if they're not tested, and even if you bring them good organic food, you could be contributing to their hormonal problems. You know, I said we don't think this way.
Right.
But we have more breast cancer, more female hormone problems, more infertility, more endometriosis, more uteruses being ripped out, more HRT ever in history, and we're crazy by thinking this way?
I'll be crazy. Think about. Something really to give careful thought to. And, you know, in all the years I've been doing this laboratory testing, and I'm actually starting my 38th year now, I've only met one other physician that had that same mindset as you with respect to requiring food testing up front for not as in-depth an appreciation and reason, but he just noticed that he could not be certain of helping someone that wasn't going to be the partner by eating properly, by eating ways that weren't inflammatory. So how about this? I'm guessing that many of your patients are female, but how about a male patient? Have you had some nice experiences there? What sorts of complaints do the men, or what symptoms are you seeing in the male patients that you're encountering?
Well, we know this. We know that anything, any trigger to any food allergy that way, we know in general that there's an inflammatory response. It's sad because look up our statistics. Both male and female heart disease is at an all-time high.
Absolutely. Okay.
And the BS that cholesterol causes heart disease, please, guys, don't fall into that junk. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease. It never has and it never will. Okay? Think of it this way. Here, guys, you want to see something really common? Hormones drop, cholesterol goes up. It's that simple. Okay? Cholesterol is important to essential life that way. But here's the sad part. Do you understand that if you go onto the American Heart Association website, what is the number one symptom in the first sign of heart disease in males? Take a guess. Just take a quick guess.
The number one symptom, numbness in the left arm.
It's called death. Not my stat, theirs. Now here's why. Oops. You can have consistent inflammatory reactions, and one of the major organs that takes a beating is what? Your heart. Your heart is degenerating from constant inflammation that way. A constant inflammation. And here's what happens. Why do you think you measure CRP levels or LDH levels, lactase dehydrogenase, and you see massive tissue destruction, and these people have absolutely no symptoms?
Good point.
Because remember, it's ridiculous, and that's why I'm sitting there going, why would anybody ever judge their body and how they feel? I tell every patient, I have never asked a person in 17 years how they ever felt. I don't give a crap how you feel. I'm going to test you properly, and I'm going to see where your body's at, and then just like a dentist never goes, Jeffrey, how's your teeth feel? He says, sit down, open up, shut up, I'm going to test you. Take an x-ray and look.
Hey, put something in my mouth, I can't even talk. But yeah. That's another great distinction, though, about not really being too concerned about we're concerned someone says they don't feel good, but asking someone how they feel isn't a valid measure of how they're really doing. Great point. Now, I have a daughter and I have a son. They're both married. They're all around age 30. And they're all healthy and fit. They're CrossFit people. They do a variety of different exercise and fitness and eat very healthfully. So the question I have is, how concerned should they be about hormone levels and any kind of assessment at that age in great health?
Well, here's what happens. I have a 12-year-old daughter, okay, and she actually is going to get her cycle probably in the next couple of years that way. Let me ask you a question. Do you think I've measured her hormones yet?
Yes.
Absolutely. Why, if we're truly doctors of physiology, doctors of homeostasis, and chiropractors, I know you're on there, we are not back pain doctors. We are actually the best people, and we study physiology better than anybody on the planet. No disrespect to the naturopaths, I am one. No disrespect to the medical doctors, I train them all the time that way, but we are doctors of physiology. So I'm going to monitor. I have 4 daughters. Yes, please pray for me. I have 4 daughters, okay? What I want you to think about is this. It's really funny. You want what's really funny? I actually have all sisters, and all my sisters have boys, and I have 4 daughters. I said, God, I understand what direction I'm supposed to go in. Okay.
Wow.
But here's what happens: is this? Why are we so? I want you to think of that. Remember, we are carpenters. That's what kind of doctors we are. We're in the constant process of analyzing and rebuilding the house, and your body rebuilds every day. That's why we lose. That's why we lose trillions of cells, and they regenerate every day that way. And see, the one thing is this: why do we ran into a system that we think that we have to wait till we fall apart that way? My daughter already at 12 years old has had her hormones measured already several times, and she's had beautiful young girl hormones. But when they increase, guess what? See, I want you to think about this, guys. Think about this in the back of your head, and to answer your question on here, just because I want to get in your brain a little bit. Is PMS normal? Oh.
Certainly not. We just had a brief interruption on the phone. Hold on. I'm sure Dr. Flynn will return to us. I think there was a little disconnect. It can happen. And I trust you're finding this very fascinating. I certainly am, and I hope it's giving everyone on the line plenty to think about and ultimately to take action, because there is an event coming up that we're going to invite you to take part in. And we'll talk about that a little more. It's actually coming up as early as next month, February, in the Orlando area, where Dr. Flynn will be featuring as a speaker. Dr. Flynn, have you restored here? Okay, not quite sure what our technical issue is. It does happen at times, and we've covered most of the ground, so I'm happy to say we're in real good shape in that regard. Hold on just one moment. We're going to take a quick technical check. We appreciate. Hello.
Hello, Jeffrey.
Yes, sir. Thank you for returning.
Yes, for some reason we lost that for a second. You know what happens is, I know what happens. The government is trying to stop us from giving life-changing information. You know what I'm saying?
It can happen.
There's no way you can't stop us. You can't stop us in what we're going to do.
We'll do it with drum beats if we have to.
That's right.
Well, the wonderful thing is we have covered most of the ground and the subject we went into, at least for this time, because I'm sure we'll do follow-ups on this. There's been a very nice interest. There's been plenty of questions coming in, but I want to be certain a couple of more things here. One is for doctors that are brand new, they're just hearing this type of thinking and idea for the first time. What's their best first step? What would you suggest they do next?
Well, it's really simple, okay? Number one, it's just understand the concept. Here's what happens. I'm big on training. Guys, listen, trust me, what I gave you, I know it excites you, because why? It excites me every day after 17 years. I'm still jacked up every day of practice, okay? You got to find people, for example, to be trained by, and then what happens is you got to be set up with the proper tools. Like I said, tell people, if you're a carpenter and you don't have a hammer and nails, you're not a very good carpenter. You have the right tools in your toolbox that way, Okay, so get signed up if you don't have doing labs right now. Get signed up to do labs. Okay, I love our labs. It gets to do us that way. But then what happens is there's great trainings out there. I do a lot of trainings that way. You can even go to our website. Even go to our just type in Google The Wellness Way. It's a great way to see how we connect with patients. We actually even have videos on there. We have videos that we train patients with. We actually, no joke, we have even trainings if you actually contact our office that way, not as far as our clinical office, but our training office that way, to where we can send you some links that way that can help. But that's why we give you a link to give you an idea of one of the trainings that we can give away to them that way. Training is still the key, guys. It's not a joke. I train my doctors every week. And you say, well, Doc, how do we do it? I have not only my doctors here in the office I have here, and I have a very large office in Green Bay. I also train online, train video that way. We also have seminars. And so the great thing is, come train with us. It's a great time. And when you're training, you're not just training with doctors that, for example, that are looking to become Wellness Ways or actually become like us that way. It's my doctors that practice with us every day. Remember, we do have offices all over the country.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit as we're coming to the close of our hour, a little bit about your event coming up in Orlando, and give docs a little idea of why they want to attend and what type of materials we're going to cover and so on and so forth.
Well, we have in February, it's called our Hormone Extravaganza, okay? And the reason why we use that title is because of all the devastating hormonal conditions out there, so it grabs the attention. But listening to us over the last hour, what I really want you to think about is this. This is not a natural balancing hormone seminar. What it becomes is one of my favorite TV shows, and I don't watch much TV, but I love this show, is CSI. We become the investigators. You know what I'm saying? We actually figure these things out, and we really start to actually get down. And not only the fact am I going to take, you say, Doc, I'm a chiropractor. I just got interested in doing some food allergy testing that way. I don't know anything. Trust me, you don't have to know anything. I'm going to start from scratch one to what a hormone is. When I said the word cytokine tonight, a lot of you guys are going, what the hell is that? You say, don't wrong. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But what we do is we got to break it down and start from the simplistic. And they say, Doc, well, I've been doing some hormone work. It doesn't matter. We're going to take it in great detail. And then just like you asked for a state in clinical cases, I'm going to show you exact patient's age, everything that way, their labs, their course of care. See, one thing that's quite interesting, and I know some of you guys have probably experienced this. You started off and you did a lab, and you saw some results, but you had no freaking clue where to go and how to manage a patient over the course of their life. Let me say it again, over the course of their life. People don't really know because why? They're always trying to do patients. And like you said, I've worked very specific on my language on understanding that these patients have to partner with us. It's really funny. Because here's what and you think I'm joking, I invite every one of you guys, if you want to come along and actually just follow me in the office, I practice full time. Tomorrow I practice from 8 o'clock, I get done at 6:30, I have no breaks. No joke, patients all day long. I have to work that much because we're so full, okay? And I have 6 other doctors in this office and we're still that busy. And here's what happens, is when they come in and a patient, like we just had holidays, I tell them, I'm like, get on my exam table and listen to your belly. The cool thing is this, they start telling me all the bad stuff. I say, listen, it's good job security for me. You understand? See, I don't take responsibility for their bad habits. See, so the cool thing about the trainings, I'm going to teach you physiology, the connections, how to figure these extremely intense hormone problems out. But here's what happens. Like I said before, Jeffrey, this is more than hormone tests. It's going to almost relate to heart disease, cancers, everything that way, because there is not one gear that's not affected if you eat a food allergy. Not one gear. They're all affected. We have to stop separating the body into parts. So I'm going to break down the physics. Then I'm going to show you, for example, the herbals, the amino acids, the nutritional stuff that way to actually do that. And I say, Doc, but wait, I'm also a chiropractor. Yes, chiropractic contributes to that trauma and that inflammatory reaction. I'll show you their x-rays. I'll show you. It's the only seminar that takes the trauma toxin thought process and puts it all together so they can walk a person through and teach these doctors not only the biochemical pathways so they know exactly what to do, but also give them the patient management from a person, like you said, from start to finish, and how we actually get them to do long-term care. Long-term care doesn't mean they're always getting stuff from you, but you know this, Jeffrey, and you're the best at this, okay? Let me be honest with you. Be really honest with me, and I'll be honest with you guys too. In the last month, have any of you guys at your company or my company maybe have had something they shouldn't? Probably say yes.
Oh, of course.
Now here's the question, and we're the best.
Right.
Now remember, these patients have been, the minute that they leave our office, they're bombarded by commercials, McDonald's, and
hunger. They're on the road. Hunger. I gotta eat something.
Thank you. And see, so what happens is, so we don't have to convince them to come back to business. You know why? Because if you teach them this way on some of the clinical pearls I taught you tonight, They'll come back and they'll squeal themselves. Say, Doc, I got to do this. I got to retest. I got to do this. I threw myself off. It's been this. You think I'm joking? People are always wondering, Doc, how do you get so many patients? I don't have to. I teach them right, and they come in by the buckets to us. And then when they're here, they squeal how bad they've been, and they tell us, okay, I got to keep on doing this. It's my fault. You're right. It's your fault.
Right. The exciting thing, though, is that they discovered through you and for themselves that there's a link between what they're doing and how they're feeling, so that they're starting to own the responsibility. They're not coming as a victim. They're coming really as an enlightened person. So let's just share now. It's February 19th and 20th in the Orlando area, and Dr. Flynn and his staff have been kind enough to offer a very special, very low fee. It's normally $299 to attend this event, but all people on this call and listening are at $199. So you'll be able to receive a link from us, more information about it. Strongly recommend you take your practice to the next level and attend this great event. So we'll give you full details in a follow-up email, and of course you can go to the doc's website and learn more about it as well. And Boone, how are we going to draw one of those names? Because one of the docs on the line is going to be very happy winner of a free attendance to this particular event. So I've got Boone here doing some kind of a little raffling of names, and let's just see who the lucky person is. A $299 gift tonight. That's it.
That's the one.
Dr. Cliff Brickman. Dr. Cliff Brickman. We will be in touch with you, and congratulations. Hopefully you can clear your schedule and you'll be in Orlando, Florida with the rest of us on February 19th and 20th. The attendance has been excellent. The staying with us through to the end is very much appreciated, and we will continue this conversation at another time, I'm certain, because there's so much more that can be covered. Thank you, Dr. Flynn.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure tonight.
Our pleasure. Wish you all a great evening, great health, and thank you for attending this event. We'll talk to you again soon.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.